Okay, it looks like we have a quorum. Sorry for the slightly late start here. Okay, good. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mike Little, Mayor of the District of North Vancouver, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all here to a public hearing on Tuesday, February 7th at 7 o'clock. Public hearing is a quasi-judicial setting, which means the council has a very particular role in this, and it's bound by some legal constraints. So I'm going to read this public hearing script at the front end of the meeting, which I hope will better define what we're about to do. So at this time, we're here for the public hearing for units 124, 1199 Lynn Valley Road zoning bylaw amendments. The public hearing is being convened pursuant to Section 464 of the Local Government Act and is being held in a hybrid meeting format, meaning there is a combination of in-person electronic participation by some or all members of the council, staff, and the public. So at this time, we have we don't have Councillor Forbes attached to the meeting, but all other members of council are currently attached to the meeting. All that means is that Councillor Forbes can't participate in the vote until she's availed herself of the meeting minutes and the recordings to prepare to make that vote. But as you can see, 6 of the members of council are directly participating in the meeting at this time. The chair has established the following rules for this hearing. We will first go through the established speakers list. At the end of the speakers list, the chair may call for any other speakers not on the speakers list. You will have 5 minutes to address council for a first time. Begin your remarks to council by stating your name. After everyone who wishes to speak has spoken once, speakers will then be allowed one additional 5-minute opportunity. Any additional presentations will only be allowed at the discretion of the chair. Please do not repeat information from your previous presentations and ensure your comments remain focused on the bylaws under consideration this evening. If you have provided a written submission, there is no need to read it as it will have already been seen by council. You may summarize or briefly reiterate the highlights of your submission, but ensure your comments pertain to the bylaw under consideration at this hearing. All members of the audience are asked to be respectful of one another as diverse opinions are expressed. Council wishes to hear everyone's views in an open and impartial forum. Some important notes about public hearings. Council is here to listen to the public, not to debate the merits of the bylaw. Council may ask clarifying questions. The clerk has a binder containing documents and submissions related to the bylaws which council has received and which you are welcome to review. This is available on the table next to the door and online at dnv.org/agenda. Everyone at the hearing will be provided an opportunity to speak. If necessary, we will continue the hearing on a second night. At the conclusion of the public input, council may request further information from staff, which may or may not require an extension of the hearing, or council may close the hearing, after which council should not receive further new information from the public. Finally, please note that this hearing is being held via Zoom and recorded in accordance with the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. At this time, I'm going to call on the clerk to introduce the bylaws.
Thank you, Your Worship. Bylaw 8607 proposes to amend the district zoning bylaw by adding the property located at Unit 124, 1199 Lynn Valley Road to the table of properties where a cannabis retail store may be located. Your Worship, there is a staff presentation.
Thank you very much. And so the order of the evening is first we'll have a staff presentation, then we'll have a presentation from the applicant, and then we'll get onto the public hearing meeting. Staff have up to 15 minutes to present. The applicant has up to 15 minutes to present, and then the public will be after that point. So at this point, Dejan, you're going to be coming over to present here. Fantastic. Welcome. Do I have this right? Mr. Teo Dvorak or Dvorak?
It's Teodorovich.
There you go. Okay. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council, and members of the public. My name is Dejan Teodorovich, and I will be providing you with an overview of the proposed rezoning application. Tonight's public hearing is for a text amendment to the district zoning bylaw to allow a cannabis retail store at Unit 124 in the Lynn Valley Center. The application is for a privately owned store operated by Nimbus Cannabis. The Lynn Valley Center is located along the intersection of Mountain Highway and Lynn Valley Road. Retail unit 124 is outlined in green and is located on the east side of the mall. The Lynn Valley Center has approximately 50 stores, providing a diverse range of businesses to meet the needs of the local community. The uses surrounding the proposed store are a health food store, a
Can I
small
just
scale.
pause you for just a second? Is there a way to bring this up on our screens?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The uses surrounding the proposed store are a health food store, a small scale fruit and vegetable market, a pet store, and a dollar store. The site is zoned general commercial C2, which permits a cannabis retail store when that use is listed in the table found in section 405B1 of the zoning bylaw. Bylaw 8607 proposes to permit a cannabis store at unit 124 at 1199 Lynn Valley Road. I just want to start by providing you with a short overview on the current cannabis legislation. Recreational cannabis has been legal for sale and consumption since October 2018 after the federal government passed the Cannabis Act. Provincial governments were tasked with creating their own regulation and licensing standards. In British Columbia, the final approval of a cannabis retail store is issued by the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch, the LCRB. As part of their review process, the LCRB requires confirmation from local governments that individual sites which are seeking a license are appropriately zoned to permit a retail cannabis use. Should this rezoning be approved, the LCRB would be notified of the decision. In 2019, District Council adopted the non-medical retail cannabis policy. This policy provides a set of locational guidelines and other evaluation criteria to be reviewed when considering a cannabis application. The policy supports council discretion and case-by-case evaluation of each cannabis application. This allows for a measured and intentional approach to introducing cannabis stores. Properties which meet the locational guidelines and criteria are highlighted in brown. The proposal meets all of the locational guidelines as well as other evaluation criteria and is the first proposal for a cannabis store in the Lynn Valley Town Center. The subject property is highlighted in red. It is the lower level unit of a two-story retail unit within the shopping center. A single entrance and exit are proposed, which is accessed from the rear parking area off of Conifer Street. There is no access to the store from within the shopping mall. Vehicular access to the property is provided from Conifer Street and Library Lane, as shown with the blue arrows. The image on the right shows the proposed changes to the facade, which includes a new door, window, and signage. The applicant would be required to obtain a minor development permit, which would be issued by staff for the proposed entrance and signage. Upon receipt of the application and in accordance with the district's non-statutory notification policy, 1,385 notices were distributed to neighboring properties within a 100-meter radius of the site, and 2 signs were placed on the property frontages. The Lynn Valley Community Association was also notified. A total of 64 responses were received and included 10 responses in support of the proposal and 54 responses with concerns. Positive comments included support for providing safe and regulated access to a legal substance. Residents also acknowledged the shopping center is well served by transit, cycling, and walking. Concerns to the application were largely related to 2 common themes. The first was the location of the store in the Lynn Valley Center, which was frequented by school-age children and teenagers. The second common concern was regarding an increase in crime, loitering, and public consumption of cannabis. Staff have considered this input and reviewed it in the context of the district's cannabis policy. The map on the screen is from the district's website and shows properties where cannabis is permitted based on the locational guidelines and criteria outlined in the cannabis policy. The blue circles represent a 200-meter buffer from school sites, and the properties colored in brown are those where cannabis can be considered. As one can see, the Lynn Valley Center is one of 3 properties in Lynn Valley which meets the locational requirements outlined in the policy. It is also worth noting that provincial regulations prohibit minors under the age of 19 from entering a cannabis store. This requirement is more strict than provincial requirements for stores selling alcohol and tobacco, where minors are permitted to enter the store if accompanied by an adult. Regarding the second concern, in consultation with our bylaws department, as well as the RCMP, there has not been an increase in enforcements or callouts at the cannabis stores which have been approved and opened. Staff have also consulted with other North Shore municipalities and found that they too have not experienced any increases in callouts or bylaw enforcement at existing cannabis stores. Staff will continue to monitor existing cannabis stores for bylaw infractions and callouts. At the time that the cannabis policy was approved by council, district smoking bylaw was amended to prohibit smoking, including cannabis, on any municipal property, including parks, schools, playgrounds, sports fields, trails, buildings, and within 6 meters of any building entrance or air ventilation intake. A complete list of smoking prohibitions can be found in the smoking bylaw on the district's website. The district smoking bylaw is also aligned with the provincial regulations on cannabis consumption. During the first reading of the bylaw, concern was expressed over the number and location of notice signs. Based on these concerns, five signs were installed for the public hearing. A double-sided sign on Lynn Valley Road across from the Black Bear Pub, a double-sided sign at the corner of Mountain Highway and Conifer Street, and a single-sided sign at the proposed store location. In addition to this, notice of the public hearing was mailed out to 1,385 residents. The hearing was advertised in the North Shore News for 2 consecutive weeks, and notice was posted on the district's website. Comments received since the notice of the public hearing are similar to those that we heard during the non-statutory public input. Copies of all public input received from both notifications are included in the public hearing binder. To date, there have been 4 cannabis stores approved in the district. 2 stores in the Lionsgate Marine Drive corridor, 1 in the Lynn Creek Town Center, and 1 store on North Dollarton, which is not located within a town center. Mayor and Council, staff have reviewed this application based on the district's cannabis policy and have considered the public input received to date. The proposal is in full compliance with the policy and it is the first application in the Lynn Valley Town Center. Staff are supportive of this application. Thank you, and that concludes my presentation for this evening.
Thank you very much. Okay, and at this time, we'll call the applicant up for their presentation. Just going to clarify something with the clerk while we're waiting for that to take place. How would you like council to feed their questions into the system tonight?
We'll try to set up Teams chat and have it done that way. I'll work on that while the presentation's being done. Otherwise, they can be done orally.
So for council members, if you open your Teams app within your system, then you should be able to add your questions there. That way they're documented and we can get staff responses to them. Okay, at this time, I believe we have Shar Mortazai. Is that close?
Perfect.
Founder of Nimbus Cannabis here to present on behalf of the applicant. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Something I can help you with there? Or?
Is this USB linked to this computer? Oh, it's on the other side? Oh, got it. Perfect. Oh, there we go. Good evening, Your Worship, Council, District staff, and community members that are present and dialed in. Thank you all for giving us the time to present. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are in the unceded traditional territory of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh people. This presentation is for the zoning bylaw amendment of 124-1199 Lynn Valley Road for a cannabis retail store. My name is Shar Mortazai. I am the principal of Nimbus Cannabis. I've been a North Vancouver district resident nearly my entire life since my family immigrated to Canada in 1998. I went to Larson Elementary in Mont Royal and Handsworth for secondary school. My first job was actually delivering papers for the North Shore News. And I graduated from UBC Sauder School of Business with a specialization in finance. After a brief stint in investment banking, I started an entrepreneurial journey that led me to the cannabis industry. Initially founding an agrochemical company developing products for cannabis cultivators, Copper Grow, that can be found in hydroponic stores across Canada. I'm also the founder of Augusta Hemp Corp, an industrial hemp company with over 1,000 acres of hemp production. I serve on the board of directors of the BC Craft Farmers Co-op as a representative for cannabis retailers across BC. I started Nimbus Cannabis upon retail legalization and opened our first location in Oliver, BC in 2020, and our second location in Winnipeg, Manitoba in 2022. I've been involved in the cannabis industry from seed to sale, so to speak. Our experience in retail cannabis sector is in opening and operating 2 stores. Oliver, you can see here on the left, and Winnipeg on the right. Our store designs tend to lean towards natural and earthy tones. And our experience is about a bespoke consultative sale where we take time and inform each customer about the product they are buying and their options. Our mission, with a focus on a community-first approach, is to offer a safe, informative, and responsible environment for new and experienced cannabis users. The proposed store will have an ambiance similar to the photos I shared of our retail locations in Oliver and Winnipeg, but incorporating elements that fit together with the community in Lynn Valley. Our design focus is on flow, colors, and scents. The flow ensures that patrons can easily find the product that they want, similar to how when you walk in a Starbucks, you know where to queue without there being a strict line. Further, we take accessibility into consideration in walkers, wheelchairs, turning radiuses, shelf heights, all of that is considered. Color palette, earthy tones that are warm and welcoming, fitting in nicely with our outdoorsy community here on the shore. And I've been speaking to our design team about incorporating cedar shakes to pay homage to Lynn Valley's roots as Shaketown. Fresh sage scents throughout the store. With air-sealed packaging, you will not smell cannabis in or outside of our store. The only thing you will smell is fresh pine, similar to walking in Lynn Canyon Park after a rainy day. Access to the store is through the parking lot off of Library Lane. Initial feedback was to close mall access, where we intend to have a display box with rotating art display for local artists, so that it's not just a bare wall on the mall side. Some feedback we received recently is some customers would like to be able to access cannabis as easily as they do liquor. Some comments included, why do they need to go outside and get wet to pick up cannabis but not liquor? Some businesses have also been very excited about the traffic draw of cannabis, but thought that an access to the mall would create a more vibrant corridor. Products. The Cannabis Control and Licensing Act of BC regulates the retail cannabis licensees may only sell non-medical cannabis and cannabis accessories. All cannabis products are purchased from the wholesaler, BC LDB, and the LDB is the sole wholesaler in BC other than direct sales from producers, which are all federally licensed. Accessories are purchased from a variety of wholesalers. We tend to try to work with environmentally friendly and Canadian companies wherever possible. We'd be providing a wide range of cannabis products for all types of consumers. The community benefit, job creation. 9 new living wage jobs created. As locals, we will try to hire local where possible, including contractors. A traffic draw for local business. Cannabis is a destination. Surrounding businesses will benefit from the traffic draw. In fact, many of the businesses we spoke with locally were excited about having another traffic draw in the area, given that the current retail space has not had a long-term tenant in over 5 years. Eliminating the black market. One of the biggest impacts of licensed cannabis store is the impact of reducing illicit black market activity. Currently, over 40% of BC cannabis market is still unlicensed. A licensed use shifts that illegal activity to a taxable industry. Supporting a growing industry. Cannabis is a growing $5 billion industry in Canada. Every new location helps create more jobs across the entire supply chain, from input providers, farms, logistics, and BC's LDB warehouses. Strategies for mitigating negative impact. Our location, first and foremost, is unassuming, over 200 meters from the nearest school, one of only 2 properties in Lynn Valley Center that meet the district's criteria for cannabis retail. We have on-site parking directly adjacent to the store door. For limiting exposure to minors, as presented by district staff, minors will not be permitted in the store. This is very different than liquor, where you can take your children in and purchase. Cannabis, strictly not allowed. We do ID checks for all customers that appear under 30. No cannabis will be visible from outside of the store. Cameras will be monitored and staff will be trained to spot potential divergent cases. Recycle program. The cannabis industry lacks recycle deposit for the products. Customers throw packaging in landfills typically. We have in-house recycling program that has been successful in our other locations, encouraging customers to bring back the empties, and we make sure that they're recycled appropriately. Addiction and safe consumption. The objective of regulated industry is to ensure that a safe cannabis consumption is met. For example, informing customers of the dangers of smoking cannabis when pregnant, reinforcing the dangers of smoking and driving. Educating the customer on the different dangers is a role a cannabis licensee takes on. An informed customer is a safe customer. For loitering and on-site consumption, we have a strict no consumption policy on premise or in the immediate vicinity. We are held accountable to this by the provincial regulator. Nimbus has already applied to join the North Vancouver RCMP's Business Link program as well. Cameras placed will monitor all transactions to ensure that no product is open on site. And similar to our diversion tactics, staff is trained to monitor the exterior for loitering and consumption. Taking a look at the market and legalization impacts, we still have a long way to go. Despite legalization in 2018, Statistics Canada figure shows 40% of cannabis is still unlicensed sources. This shocking figure can be attributed to the lack of access to licensed retail. Many of BC's largest municipalities still do not have a cannabis store. Licensed cannabis shifts that activity from black market to regulated and controlled. We've seen it since legalization. The Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction has been carefully monitoring the impact of legalization. They've released a really good report on June of 22 of this year. I highly encourage anyone concerned about cannabis legalization to go and read it. And they found that since legalization, the rate of consumption in youth has decreased from 44% to 37%. 27% of those have been using cannabis less. Evidence suggests that regulation has been effective in preventing underage people from accessing cannabis through legal sources. Additionally, reducing the burden on the criminal justice program. We do not need to look further than our own local policing authorities to know that legal retail locations have not caused any harm to the communities that they operate in. Broader reports is that there's a reduction in overall cannabis incidents following legalization, and youth involvement in cannabis in the criminal justice program as a starting point from cannabis has gone down as well. In preparation of our initial application and for this presentation, we carefully tried to solicit and take into consideration feedback of the community. The presentation I just gave is a subject highlighting community concern and desires around this application. It was informed by the district's initial 64 responses of the initial notice and prior council meetings. In addition to this, we did our own direct outreach. We spoke to local businesses, engaged with mall patrons, posted on the North Vancouver Reddit forum and Facebook groups, and circulated a petition digitally and physically where we got 218 people in support and only 7 in opposition. I'll highlight a few of the ones in support and opposition before summarizing the common themes that guided our presentation. This would make a community member wrote, this would make a great addition to Lynn Valley. Lynn Valley has pretty much everything to offer within walking distance, and this store would provide myself and many others with one less reason to drive. The cannabis store would also greatly benefit Lynn Valley Mall and surrounding businesses with more foot traffic. In my experience, cannabis shops are very strict with identification and making sure they aren't selling to minors. So I believe the quote risk to the public unquote is much lower than the public believes. Another person wrote, as a resident of Lynn Valley for 22 years, I think that the community in North Vancouver, Lynn Valley specifically, has indeed lacked the readily available cannabis. For example, my mother uses CBD products as a treatment for her carpal tunnel and often is required to go all the way over town for her medications and product. Sadly, this is a reality for a lot of people in Lynn Valley. Another community member wrote, I want a separate bike route to bike here from Blue Ridge. In opposition, we hear, I hate cannabis, the smell is very strong, and I get headaches from it. Another person wrote, our youth is at risk with the increasing availability of marijuana product. We need more retail focus on health, wellness, physical activity. I do not support this. So the themes that really guided our application, and I hope that we addressed here today, I'll look at both positive and negatives. On the positive is cannabis is legal and should be accessible. The availability of cannabis should be like alcohol retailers and available in town centers. That the presence of a cannabis store will benefit Lynn Valley Center through traffic and local employment. That the increased accessibility for those who use cannabis for medical reasons, especially seniors, is a plus. And that the lack of legal cannabis results in black market purchases. The stigma around cannabis should be overcome and its medical benefits recognized, and the general excitement about local cannabis store. I will just pause. Medical use of cannabis comes up quite frequently. All retail cannabis stores are licensed as non-medical. We are not doctors. We do not provide medical advice. But the reality is the same products that you can get from a medical cannabis provider is available at the retailers. It's the same producers producing. Sometimes it's easier for medical patients to just come in a store and buy a product than it is for them to go through the licensed producers and get it shipped to their house. The opposing feedback themes that we saw is there's overall a negative attitude towards cannabis, including the objections to the smell and potential health effects, concerns about the availability of cannabis product and their impact on youth, a desire to avoid drug use, the potential influx of sketchy people, and objections to the presence of cannabis retail near schools, the need for other businesses in the area, and a mixed feeling about mall access. Some want to make the inside more vibrant and confuse why liquor has it and cannabis does not. I hope that we address both these themes in the positive and the negative adequately. I'm available for any questions, inquiries, can reach out to me at shar@nimbuscannabis.ca or the general email roll with us at nimbuscannabis.ca. I thank you all for your time, and I would leave you with this photo of Shaketown, which is Old Lynn Valley, and the Lynn Valley General Store. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be moving on to the public input portion of the meeting. And so we did endeavor to start a speakers list at the beginning ahead of time through the clerk's department. But that's not the end of it. So when I get to the end of this list, I'm going to come back out to the room. If anybody would like to speak a first time, the virtual participants will get you to raise your hands. People who are even calling in by phone, we have a way to include you in as well, and we'll go over that as we go forward. If I recall correctly to the clerk, if telephone members want to raise their hand, it's *9, and to unmute themselves, it's *6. Do I have that correct?
I gonna have to check.
We're going to confirm that before we go out from the initial list that we have here, although, yes. And so we'll double check on that before we come back out to the public. But at this time, I do have 7 speakers signed up right out of the gate before we go back out to the room for additional speakers. The first speaker that I have is Diarmuid O'Day, followed by David Hunter. And I believe Diarmuid O'Day is joining us here in person, so welcome.
Thank you.
And welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thanks again for tonight. I want to really speak and focus on the bylaw that you're working on here, and not the merits or lack of merits of marijuana, cannabis. But I do need to say before I get into my points that I want to make is that the applicant, really didn't speak to the bylaw very well. And also he raising the issue of marijuana having any medicinal validity is completely untrue. There's Health Canada, the Food and Drug Administration, the Mayo Clinic, no one sees an actual proven medical relationship between marijuana and your health. So I want to make sure that and I know that's not really the place to talk about this. So my name is Diarmuid O'Day. I live at 1575 Westover Road. I raised my children there. I grew up in the Valley at 1202 Wellington Drive. And the real reason I'm against the bylaw and I oppose the cannabis store is because I grew up and lived in Lynn Valley my whole life nearly. And it's improved so much and has so much good momentum. Everything you do as council should be to increase and improve that. Do things that are better for the community. But again, I have limited time. And so what I really want to do is just focus on this cannabis store in that location. And I want to ask rhetorically why we're here tonight. Because this council didn't have to have this public hearing. You used public money to have a survey done which showed 54-10 within a radius of that cannabis store that people were opposed to that. And people wrote very detailed, long letters to council opposing this cannabis store. And as someone that's been involved in politics at a very high level, at every level, that kind of result, 54-10, is just overwhelming. And under the Act in British Columbia, you didn't have to have a public hearing. That's all you needed to do to reject this store. This is completely unnecessary tonight. I think gives the applicant undue ability to make his case. When if you look at his web pages, you try to do any kind of research about him on the internet, there's nothing there. Some of the websites go to 404, some just have buttons for email or phone, and anything about him is really, really hard to find. This was an unfair opportunity for him to make his case. The public spoke, and I think you really ignored them. So that's my first point. My second point is that the distance issue, I think, is very murky and very suspicious in terms of how the council set up the bylaw. Now, places like Whistler and Vancouver, the limit from schools to a cannabis store is 300 meters. In North Van, it's 200, but it's really hard to understand why the district did this way. When I go back to the original 2018 consultation, there is an option there where 200 and 300 are mentioned. And for some inexplicable reason, the only one that they voted on or chose to encourage or chose to identify as the research that led them to have 200 was just completely arbitrary. There's no, I can't find any explanation why 200. And 200 meters is the only municipality that uses that number. It's either 100 or 300. And that makes me wonder, well, if it's 200, what would the reason be? Couldn't be something as cynical as they measured from the school properties to the cannabis stores that potentially would be. They wouldn't really know that. But if you go to the minutes of West Vancouver's determination of how they were going to do the distance, they actually did something like that because they had problems with the location of Hollyburn and Irwin Park relative to their commercial zones. So they deliberately say that. And if you had 300 as your distance, which again is the resort municipality, Whistler has 300, the city of Vancouver has 300, then Sherwood Park is too close to the Dollar Mall cannabis store. And I think, it might be really close, but I think Lynn Valley School might be too close to this particular store. So I think the bylaw, I don't understand why 200 was chosen. In Ontario, the provincial government gives direction to municipalities. There's a certain number, and everybody has the same. The act here doesn't specify the provincial act of British Columbia. So again, I think you as a council in camera need to wonder, why did we use 200? Because that is rather odd, and I don't find any explanation for it. The next thing, as I said, I grew up in the Valley. I think the community has really improved since I grew up there. And my parents have been here since 1956. I take my mom to the mall all the time. My mom will turn 99. Oh, I'm almost finished. The parking is an issue. I have to leave it at that because my time's run out. Thanks for listening.
You're going to be welcome to come back for an additional
perhaps I
5-minute
will.
times if you'd like to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diarmid O'Day, for your comments. Next speaker I have is David Hunter, followed by Ben Patton. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Mayor and Council, my name is David Hunter. I'm speaking tonight in support of the proposal to add the cannabis retail store at Unit 124, 1199 Lynn Valley Road. I'm a grandfather who has lived in Lynn Valley for the past 49 years, since 1974. So during this time, I've seen many positive changes in Lynn Valley that reflect the good work of this and previous councils developing and implementing OCPs. Our current approved OCP includes the following objectives that I'm going to quote here. The district's changing demographics profile places different demands on our services and programs. Walkable neighborhoods and active transportation are important determinants of mental and physical health. That's on page 419 under social issues, under page 19. Also, 35% of District of North Vancouver resident trips will be by walking, cycling, or transit by 2030, page 43. And the district's objective is to ensure safe and comfortable opportunities to walk for pedestrians throughout the community for a variety of trip purposes, page 45. Like many others who live in Lynn Valley, I take CBD instead of prescription drugs to help reduce some pain. I now need to drive to the city of North Vancouver for my CBD. And with this outlet in Lynn Valley Center, I'll be able to walk there. The location outside Lynn Valley Center in the back parking area is a good location that offers easy access and is not featured at the front of the center. There's already a large liquor store at Lynn Valley Center, and cannabis products are now just as legal as alcohol and much less damaging to overall health. So that's my input. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David Hunter. The next speaker I have is Ben Patton, followed by Borna Shagan. Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you very much. So earlier today, because I was in the midst of a very, very large meeting, I got AI to do some work for me. One of the things I did was I pre-wrote some questions, got it to punch in and write about 10 paragraphs per different thing. So there's definitely some fantastic information here. Whether or not it's the social and economic benefits to the proposed business license for cannabis dispensary in the center of Lynn Valley, North Vancouver, or whether it happens to be the following benefits for cannabis use, which has been documented time and time again, whether it's the American Health Association, or I have quite a few here and I can go into them in a second. Physiological, cognitive, biological, anti-inflammatory, anti-cancerous, anti-tumor, and alternative to antipsychotic or amphetamine medications for ADHD and autism. So that's a mouthful, absolutely. But one of the biggest things here is the repeated benefits. It keeps coming back up as apparently not medically founded. So the Arthritis Society of Canada, since 2001, medical cannabis has been a legal treatment option in Canada for certain health conditions, including arthritis. While cannabis can't cure arthritis or the slow disease progression, some report more than alleviates their health symptoms. Now, in a more personal note, unfortunately, she's my cousin. She has been diagnosed with a I unfortunately don't know the stage yet because she's going through a significant amount of treatment. However, her household is not doing great. And one of the biggest things when they found out their diagnosis of ovarian cancer I still don't know what the stage is, They are now in the process of getting as much THC into her body as humanly possible. The chemo is apparently like razor blades, and it wasn't until THC that was actively able to help reduce that inflammation. Okay, so that is right there an anecdotal piece that we can bring forward. Just as much as any of the, if you type in right now, the medical benefits associated, you'll find plenty of stuff back and forth. But you will find medical evidence that is documented in government bodies, whether it's the Canadian side or the American side. So hearing some of these things, we need to remember that there's actually the logical fallacies can't be disproved, or it can be easily disproved by a Google search. So as we move forward, I'll submit these into the council writing, but some of them being the endocannabinoid system in the human being or in human beings, and how cannabis possibly interacts with it. We happen to have an endocannabinoid system in our body. We have two receptors. It's the CB1 receptor and CB2 receptor. THC binds to CB1, and the CB2 receptor binds with CBD. These are the two most common psychoactive or non-psychoactive cannabinoids that are in the plant cannabis. Okay, those are two active ingredients in which you can, in different ways, utilize them. They come readily together in the same package which you buy from the store, but at the end of the day, there is a variety of different ways these affect the human body in a positive way, whether it's insulin function, and this has been documented now through different diabetics, now also with a variety of different anti-inflammatory benefits, which I was going through before. But one of the biggest things being the positive impact to the immune system. And that's one where we have seen with a lot of patients that are happening with when they take a very large dose of effectively cannabis oil. That has been shown as a really, really, really strong benefit to their immune system while they are, whether it's asthmatic, and again, this is orally ingested, which is Delta 8 tetrahydrocannabinol, not Delta 9, which you receive through smoking. Delta 8 is incredibly strong, it's 8 times stronger. And one of the biggest things about that is it really, really helps reduce a lot of areas through the endocannabinoid system, which is effectively helping cells communicate in a more functional way. So this is, again, a heavily documented system in the human body. And this is something where to hear that it's not founded it makes me scratch my head, which we found last time when I was in here, that it's apparently a lot more balding when I look forward with this camera. One of the last things I'll leave with is an essay written by AI on the dangers of reefer madness and anti-cannabis rhetoric. Unfortunately, Vancouver has a history of anti-cannabis rhetoric, but just as much as anti-drug rhetoric. And that stems from the cannabis tax stamps that were created after the Canadian Opium Act of 1908. And this was created by William Lyon Mackenzie King after visiting the anti-Asian race riots in Vancouver. That's an age-old history of not only racism, but documented through a lot of legal trauma to a lot of different societies. And so I'm glad we have the opportunity to speak in support of this bill, or in this bylaw.
Both Ben Patton and ChatGPT. Thank you very much. Right, next speaker I have is Borna Shaigan, followed by Aman Tabrizi. And I think they're joining us virtually. Borna Shaigan, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you guys fine.
There you
Can you
go.
hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you. Good evening, your worship, the council, and our community. My name is Borna Shaigan, and I've lived in North Vancouver District for 30 years. I want to express my support for the Nimbus Cannabis Dispensary being opened in Lynn Valley Shopping Mall. As a resident of this district, I believe that having a dispensary in a central location like the mall will provide easy access for those in need of its products and services. I have senior family members who rely on CBD ointment for their muscle and joint pain for inflammation, and would be thrilled to know they don't need to hop in the car and travel far into the city for some hand cream. Additionally, I would like to bring your attention to the issue of the mall entrance not being accessible for this dispensary. I struggle to find the logic in this restriction, especially considering the presence of a government liquor store just a few meters away. The stigma around cannabis has clouded the judgment of some, but it's important to remember that cannabis is now a legal substance and discrimination against cannabis business is not acceptable. There are people who rely on these products for medical reasons. I believe that the responsible and regulated sale of cannabis is an important step towards a healthier and more inclusive community. I urge you to support the opening of this dispensary and to ensure that it's accessible to all through the mall entrance as well. Thank you for considering my support.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker I have is Iman Tabrizi, followed by Hazen Colbert. And I don't know, is Iman Tabrizi joining us virtually? Okay, so they have not joined our meeting yet at this point, so I'm going to continue on to the speakers list and we'll come back in and check back in case they've joined our meeting at a later time. The next speaker I have is Hazen Colbert, followed by Natasha Pokakovic. We'll see how I did on that. Hazen Colbert, or is Hazen joining us virtually?
Yes. And
He's still an attendee. We need to move him over as a panelist.
he's trying. It's not accepting.
Okay, Mr. Colbert, you're going to get a notice on your screen requesting that you go up to panelist. Okay, that's okay. We can check back in with Mr. Colbert. We'll have staff communicate and get him attached to the meeting. The next speaker I have is Natasha Pokakovic, followed by virtual participant Naveed Baroyan. So Natasha, can you hear me? Have we seen Natasha on the virtual list? Clerk, I don't. We don't see a name on the list that reflects Natasha's name. So if you are on there, please make yourself known to us by raising your virtual hand. But at this point, we don't have someone attached to the meeting with that name. Okay, so the next speaker I have is a virtual participant, Naveed Baroyan. Naveed, can you hear me?
Hey guys, yeah, sorry, I was just connecting my microphone. Good evening, Your Worship. Good evening to everybody else. My name is Naveed Baroyan. I've been living in the Lower Mainland for the past 28 years, and I'm a new resident of Lynn Valley area, to be more exact, Doran. I'm strongly in favor for the cannabis store. I've been using CBD to help my mother with pain management, and I strongly believe that we should have more stores available for people who desperately need it. Like they desperately need cannabis products to help with their day-to-day use. I want to give my full support. Honestly, without the CBD cream, my mom would be in tremendous pain. And I feel like there should be more products readily available for people. And that's about it for me. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, Naveed Baroyan. I see that Mr. Colbert has joined the panel. Mr. Colbert, can you hear me? You are muted at the moment, sir.
Can you now hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you. There was a bit of an issue here with respect to how do I unmute. Council, the first thing I want to say is I don't think it really is relevant how long people have lived in Lynn Valley, because a number of people have made statements pro or not in support of the application or the bylaw. I don't know why it's relevant how long they've lived in Lynn Valley. I also want to say that over the last 2 weeks, since Dr. Cost has provided me with some very valuable input with respect to ChatGPT, I have found that ChatGPT and artificial intelligences, and I regret the use of this language, but I have to say it's simply bullshit. And I'm going to give you one example. I asked ChatGPT what are the best monopoly properties to own. This is a question that any monopoly player could answer. Probably it's on the internet 100,000 times. ChatGPT got it wrong. So I'm going to put aside anything that comes from ChatGPT. What I won't put aside is that there were 10 people in support of this bylaw and 54 people not with concerns, as staff said, against it. 54 against, 10 in support. And the reason this is relevant is I went and looked at the other public hearings. If you go to look at the North Dollarton public hearing, the number of people in support and against is even, 50-50%. I found that interesting. And then what I did is I opened up a map of all of the cannabis dispensaries across the North Shore. And I found something really kind of strange because the cannabis dispensary map includes all of the dispensaries in both the city and the district. And I was left to wonder, why is it that of the 7 dispensaries that we now have, we've got 8 dispensaries we now have. 4 of them are on Marine Drive within 200 meters of each other. We've got then 2 over in the district of North Vancouver, just off not Marine Drive, Main Street. We've got the one that's way out in North Dollarton, but we don't seem to have any across. You know, the Seymour is the largest geographic area on the North Shore. They've got 1 cannabis dispensary. 1. So that's weird. In any event, I also want to say that the discussion about smoking cannabis or smoking weed is completely irrelevant. If you actually go into these dispensaries, if you go into these stores, 90% of the products are not products that you smoke. They are taken into the body in different ways. And I have to tell you, this is extraordinarily important because I did some research into the Nimbus products. And I compared the Nimbus products, which include things like edibles, gummies, drinks, to other products. And I compared the levels of CBD and THC. I was shocked. The Nimbus products are between 5 and 10 times higher than typically you would find elsewhere. In fact, the consumption of one Nimbus product, according to standards, and I'm going to quote here if I can find it, I may not be able to. Standards that come from the Office of Indigent Defense Services. One product, the consumption of one product that is put forward by Nimbus results in a person being impaired under US law. One product, one time. So while I am opposed generally to the cannabis store in Lund Valley Mall, I could keep my mind open and agree to it, but not a Nimbus product, not a Nimbus application. Thank you, Council. You're dismissed.
Thank you, Mr. Colbert. Okay, we've confirmed that Eamon Tabrizi will not be joining the meeting tonight. So just circling back, Natasha Pokakovic, do we have confirmation? We still do not see them attached to the meeting. If you are attached to the meeting, maybe perhaps raise your hand, change your name to reflect to your name. If you are the caller in, we do have one caller listening in to our meeting. I did want to say again, to raise your virtual hand as a caller, you need to press *9 on your telephone pad. And then when it's time to speak, you'd need to press *6. So there we go. Now I see a virtual hand from the call in there. And so if we can have them transferred over to the panel, that would be great. Again, and what's going to happen once we exhaust the speakers a first time, then we're going to take a bit of a pause in the meeting. We're going to go over any questions that may have come in from council at that time. Once we've done that, we'll resume back with public input at that point. But right now we do have a caller coming in. So if you can hear me and if you can start with your name and approximate address, that would be appreciated.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. My name is Natasha Shekovich. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
I've lived in North Vancouver for the past 10 years, and I support this application and would love to see a cannabis store in Lynn Valley, as it would be nice to do all my shopping in one spot with my elderly grandma, who is 90 years old and who lives in the area. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you so much for your comments, Natasha. Okay, would anybody else like to address the hearing for a first time? I see Lyle Craver in the back, and then we have two other participants here, a third over, fourth over there. So Mr. Craver, I'm going to start with you. Welcome, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you, Your Worship. Lyle Craver, 4797 Hoskins Road, 30-year resident of Lynn Valley. I grew up in North Vancouver and I know the area well. I know this particular location extremely well. The bottom line is what is being applied for here is not a medical cannabis store, although much of the conversation tonight has been about that. It's a general purpose cannabis store, and under the laws of the land as they exist, they have a right to exist. My main reason for being here tonight is I am also extremely familiar with Lynn Valley Mall, and I have made a practice through the years of parking and of entering the mall from all directions. There are several entrances to the mall, and this particular one is on the northern east side entrance to the mall. This particular entrance has always acted as a emergency exit from the mall in case of trouble, and it is proposed under this particular application to close that section off. Your Worship, I am not real enthused about the idea of closing off emergency routes. I would be much more content with this application if that egress route was not to be closed off. Okay, other areas in this discussion. North Vancouver District has a long-standing problem in the area of public notification. While, to quote my good friend Eric Anderson, while I did not speak tonight on behalf of any organization or community association with which I am associated, I am an officer of the Lynn Valley Community Association, and I can vouch that when the email came from district staff to our association, it arrived too late for our board members to be notified before first reading of this application. Public information on this application has been sketchy at best all through the procedure, and thanks to the mayor, who actually, I understand, leaned reasonably hard to make sure proper notification was given, late, but given. I think we've identified an area that district council will have to be working on to improve going forward, not just on this application. Notification requirements have been challenging on quite a few applications before council in the last 5 years, and I don't think we are anywhere remotely close to the promised land yet. That said, please, council, remember this is not a medical cannabis application. This is the general purpose, open to the public store we're discussing. Those stores are legal under existing legislation, and as a result, let us hear no more either in the public hearing or when this subsequently comes back to council on the general subject of merits of medical cannabis, one way or the other. It's all very nice, but it's simply not pertinent. This is a commercial cannabis store that's applying. This is not a medical dispensary, and that should be left out of any further discussions either in the public hearing or before council going forward. Again, thank you for your time tonight. It's been an interesting application, but I really do feel strongly that the east exit from the mall to the outside should not be closed off. It is intended for emergency use and also general access of the public, and I see no good reason to cut it off. Again, if the applicant is actually challenged to keep minors out of his or her store, then we have issues concerning whether or not they should be given a business license in the first place. From what I hear tonight, I don't believe that to be the case. So open the door. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Craver. I'm going to take the person from the fourth row on the right-hand side, yes, followed by the third row on the right side, followed by the fourth row on the left side, if that's okay. So please, welcome. And if, as you start your comments, and welcome, you're welcome to join the hearing for 5 minutes. If you could start with your name and approximate address, we'd appreciate that.
My name is Helen Reed, and my pronouns are she, her, and I live in Lynn Valley, fairly close to the mall, actually, very close, within an 8-minute walk precisely. I didn't come with anything written prepared because I'd like to say thank you for having me, and thank you to Mayor and Council and to my neighbours, because I wanted to listen to everything that was being put forward. So on reflection of my own thoughts and also what's been said here this evening, for me, it's very simply an equitable access issue to a safe legal product. I am, probably may surprise some people in the room, a typical shopper at a cannabis store. Middle-aged parent, conservative job, wasn't a user in my youth, never used it prior to legalization. I now shop regularly at cannabis stores. I shop for there is some clinical evidence that it is medicinally beneficial, evidenced by the government does prescribe it in certain situations, sativas, for example, for pain management, in cancer treatments, and some products for the improvement of appetite, people who are suffering from nausea. So there's a lot of clinical evidence. I won't debate that because I think, that's something that people have to explore themselves and feel comfortable with. There is still a lot of stigma around this. And so I still feel like, do I say yes, I do occasionally use this recreationally? Yes, I do. I use it safely, legally in my home. I never use it in a way that I am impaired in any way in public or driving. And I have to shop elsewhere for it. I go to Park and Tilford, I go to Lower Lonsdale, I go to West Van's Ambleside store. I have the privilege of owning a vehicle, of being able to drive a vehicle at this point in my life. That's not a privilege everyone has. I would like to be able to walk to the store in my neighborhood and shop in a safe, legal store. My experience of shopping in these stores is that they're beyond discreet in terms of what is behind the door and the glass of these doors. You cannot enter unless you are 19 or over. You are screened on the way in. I don't get asked for ID for obvious reasons, but I have seen people being asked for ID before they get beyond the door entrance. Should you be here? Show me your ID. So I have a lot of respect for the industry in its vigilance around the safe access for minors. I think it would be very beneficial to Lynn Valley. I'm very much in favor of it. I understand and I can hear the concerns of my neighbors and some of my friends who are here this evening. For people here I've known for a long time, and I hear their concerns, but I don't share the concern because of my own personal experience. So I'm really asking council to consider this as an equitable access issue. And I think the mall, I've really leaned into what other people have said about concerns about loitering. I'd never experienced that outside a cannabis store, regardless of its location, whether it's in a strip mall like the Lower Lonsdale location, or somewhere in an office building like the West Vancouver location, or the new Park and Tilford location that's sort of separate from the mall building structure itself. I have never seen anyone loiter outside a cannabis store, ever. And that is the truth. So I just want that reassure, I suppose, some of my friends and neighbors as longtime residents themselves. And I agree with the person who said, regardless of how long you've lived in this community, what we're asking for is safe, equitable access to a legal product. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Next speaker I have is row 3 over here, please, welcome. And then it'll be row 4 on this side, and then I have a virtual hand from Matthew Kyler. We'll move you over as a panelist as well. Welcome, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you. My name is Candy. I own the store next door. I have a health food store for 30 years in the mall, and I am opposed. And I have many reasons why. And it's a family mall, and people are bringing their children in. I consider it inappropriate, and to say the least. They're closing off the outside door, which would stop the traffic from coming in. I'm exhausted, sorry. I've been working 7 days a week, 4 years in a row through COVID. The only person that stayed open in the mall consistently. I'm very dedicated to my business and to my customers. I've asked many of them, almost all of them, about what they would consider, how they would consider this situation. Every one of them said no. Every one of them said that they were concerned about their children. And yes, we have free enterprise. It's just inappropriate there. There are different rules in the mall. Everyone's talking about medicinals here. Well, my store is medicinal. It's herbal medicinal, which is what seems like people are talking about, whether that dynamic is correct or not. That's how people are perceiving it, which would be a direct impact on my store in a negative way. Just the mall volume. I pay a lot of money for a lot of years to get. I wouldn't even be in the mall if that volume wasn't available for me. So now the outside, there won't be an entrance from the mall, so it'll be all outside. I could see the kids in my mind, they're already there. When I walk to my store, I hold my breath basically in the morning. There's vaping, there's all sorts of things going on, and I consider it just not appropriate. The people that are walking in and out of the mall, I have to hold my breath when I go to my car at night sometimes, and sometimes I'm there at 2 in the morning. So I just have personal concerns. But besides all of that, I love people. I want things that work medicinally for them. And I have different thoughts on that when it comes. I don't think we should be breathing smoke from a campfire, much less, inhaling directly. So there's static already, and there's not even an opening yet. And I really appreciate being able to get along with my neighbors. There's friction already. And so from my point of view with this, if I was a young mother, I would purposely avoid the mall if there was a cannabis store in it. I wouldn't want to have, I consider it marketing children, basically. And, I just want to go to the mall and buy what I buy and get my stuff and deal with the community and not have to have a talk with my 4-year-old about why is that store there and what does it mean. And there are appropriate places to put stores, but I do think that I have to look at my lease, but you're not even allowed to open up 2 stores together that do the same thing, basically. So, here I am trying to undo the effects of the cilia in the lungs being paralyzed from any kind of smoke, not to mention the edibles, not to mention the kids. And people will say, well, there's a liquor store right there, but it's different. It's more contained. There's no children around. There's no parents can smoke in their house and no one's monitoring the kids walking in and out, or the kids taking the edibles or the gummy bears or whatever it is. I see that all the time. So it's not so much personal in that respect as to whether it's medicinal, whether it isn't, but there is a direct conflict. And I am opposed to it, and my customers are so far. And many of them have said they won't come in the mall. There's already a parking issue there that has been involved ever since the construction. So 4 and 5 years, the tenants have been digging and borrowing money and trying to anyways, I'm finished.
Okay, thank you very much
You're
for your
welcome.
comments. Well, the gentleman over here from the fourth row on the left there. We're going to keep adding to the list as we go along, but I have a virtual speaker that's signed up next, and then I'll come to you. So, yeah.
Good evening, Your Worship and member of council. For full disclosure, my name is Shahruz Mortazai, brother of the applicant. Both Shar and I grew up in North Vancouver and moved here since '98. I went to the opposite of school of Shar when I went to Carson Cram instead of Handsworth. I recently moved back from Vancouver area, Gastown, to North Vancouver with my young family. I have 2 kids, and one of my kids goes to a school very near Lynn Valley Mall, Eastview. So we are living fairly close to the Lynn Valley Mall. One thing that I do know is it is important for us to educate our children about these products. I educated my child when we were living in Gastown with all the risks that was involved around us, especially around the pandemic. So I will continue to educate my child about some of the things that are available, such as cannabis, in order for them to understand the product, the risk, and the benefits. I personally see no risk for my kids for cannabis legalization. I fully support this application because I know my brother and Nimbus will take a great lead of teaching the community about the risks and the benefits that cannabis product will bring to the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next speaker I have was a virtual participant. I believe the name is Matthew Kylar. Is that correct? Matthew Kylar, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Good evening. I hope you've been having a good day so far. I think this is not really pertaining to an issue of exactly what sort of business and in what industry should be allowed to operate in Lynn Valley. I think this is more broadly an issue of the entrepreneurial spirit that Canada is known for, even across on the other side of the Atlantic. And I think it's an issue of that versus preserving some arbitrary notion of neighborhood character. I think what we've got here is a business opportunity that not only allows someone to realize a goal that they've been working for, undoubtedly effortlessly for years, an opportunity to add another business to the catalog that currently resides in Lynn Valley, a method to generate additional tax revenue via property tax, sales tax, money that has the chance to be reinvested in the community. And I think it's rather absurd that someone who's been working quite hard for the last few years, trying to set up this business, trying to do right by the community, add another business that adds some extra options for residents who might have felt locked out due to the nearest one being far away. I think it's a little bit selfish to want to block that just on the basis of needing to preserve neighborhood character or deeming what sort of business is in line with Lynn Valley's cultural sensibilities. For decades, people have fled repression overseas to move to Canada, build a better life for themselves, knowing that the sort of open society, open economy allows them to pursue their dreams, build the businesses that they want to build, contribute to the community in the ways that they feel they can do best. And I think this applicant that we've got here is a shining example of that. Mentioned that he moved to Canada in the late 90s. And I think this business here is a realization of the Canadian dream that, Canada's been renowned for and which people still aspire to realize today. Moreover, I did want to also point out an article from the Atlantic magazine I've been reading recently called "Community Input is Bad, Actually." I'll cite a quote here. "Development projects are subject to a process I like to call whoever yells the loudest and longest wins. Some refer to this as participatory democracy. It's biased towards the status quo and privileges a small group of residents who, for reasons that range from the sympathetic to the selfish, don't want to allow projects that are broadly useful." You might think that's a little bit of a stretch here, and since it was written in an American magazine, maybe the same situation isn't 100% applicable, but I think the spirit that underpins that article is very much evident here. We have a real opportunity to add another business to Lynn Valley that would provide real economic benefits via additional taxes collected, foot traffic that also helps bring business to the other shops, restaurants, stores surrounding it, an opportunity that potentially could be wasted and squandered because a few insular residents feel like it goes against their cultural sensibilities. Again, they're very much entitled to their opinions. I've already heard some of the concerns listed here, and that's okay. That's what these meetings are all about. But I do think that we do need to, when examining these sorts of issues, we do need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture rather than try to shut down a project based on, it's out of touch with my personal opinions. What are the wider benefits? And I think the applicant, when he went through his overview earlier, he clearly delineated what benefits we can expect from this business, this development, as well as the different things to take into account. And seeing how this particular industry of cannabis has been legal for years now and is considered to be in the same category as alcohol, something that's been socially acceptable for thousands of years, I don't see any reason why preferential treatment should be applied to one business over another, because in my view, this cannabis store is just like any other business and it confers similar benefits to the community if approved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, Matthew Kylar. The next speaker I have is this representative here. Come on up. If you could start with your name and approximate address, that'd be helpful.
My name's Larry Craker. I live in Lynn Valley on Duval Road. When I first saw the letter that this was being considered, first thing that came to my mind was my 13-year-old daughter. And I thought, why would they put a cannabis store so close to Argyle High School and Lynn Valley Elementary? And at first I had visions they're going to put a big store in the parking lot, like down in Park and Tilford. So I'm a little encouraged that it's not going to be like that. And the other thing is the access in the mall. And, you know, I'm good, it's a little obscure. In any case, but really what this is about, it is a legal product. The sex things are legal products. If I was applying to put a sex store there, would anybody be upset? Lynn Valley is a very family-oriented area, and really it has more to do with what the residents of Lynn Valley want. And I wasn't aware, like the first fellow that was talking here said there was a survey and 54 were against and 10 were for. And he said, well, that shouldn't have even come to council. I don't know if that's the key. The other thing I heard was the strength of these products that this store is selling compared to other stores. Another is vicinity, access to the legal product. Well, Park and Tilford is just down the hill. I've been to that store. It's like 5,000 or 10,000 square feet. It's very professional, very nice. To me, it has to do with the high schools, the kids, the influence, the neighborhood, the family orientation, and do we need it? Like, if you approve that, maybe I should open a sex store next door. Like that is a possibility. I'm a little concerned there's a vaping store across the street with a big sign that says vape. And I don't know if that had to go through approval or not, but with the high school kids that are around and they hang around the mall and they're gonna know it's there and it just is saying, this is okay. And for me, it's a bit of an emotional issue. You know, I grew up in the days where lots of drugs are sold in schools. And I've seen kids that have done marijuana. And, you know, now it's different. I like the idea that it can be above board and people are educated and all of that. But do we need it in our mall? By the schools? Is that the place for it to be? I don't know. I just don't agree with that. And also, you know, I appreciate it's the legalized product. It's actually kind of funny because when I was 16, I think that was in the 60s or 70s, and I wrote a letter to Pierre Trudeau saying I thought marijuana should be legalized because so many drugs were available, you know, in illicit ways. But you know, now I have a 13-year-old daughter. Really, it has the influence. I don't want it just, even with alcohol, for instance. I don't necessarily want her to be drinking, you know, standing outside the liquor store waiting for someone to go in and buy booze. Like, are kids gonna hang around and ask for people to go in and buy weed for them? That's the real possibility. There's also the fact that there's the Lynn Valley residences, there's all these condos around. There's gonna be more. All these condos have stratas that restrict smoking. They all have smoking bylaws. City Hall has smoking bylaws. So you're gonna put this right in the center of it. It just doesn't make sense to me. If somebody really wants to get cannabis, even if I wanted to, I run down to Park and Tilford, and people that don't want to walk, well, there's a 210 bus that goes straight there. Anyway, I see my time's almost up. That's what I have to say.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comments. Okay, at this moment, I don't see any other first-time speakers. Are there any other first-time speakers virtually or in person? And again, we'll come back to the public in a moment. Hang on here. I have Corey Cost as an attendee. Can we move Corey Cost over as a panelist? And so again, once we go through first time, we'll take a little bit of a break and then we'll let the staff respond to questions, and then we'll return and see if there's any additional comments. Corey Cost, can you hear me?
Yes, Your Worship. Can you hear me?
Clearly, welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Okay, I'll keep my points short to try and straighten out some facts I feel were incorrect. There's actually, as staff showed in his presentation, there's a bit of an overhang outside of the store and immediate parking within 5 feet of the store, actually. So just look carefully at what staff presented. Youth age 16 to 19, the statistic dropping from 44 to 37%, even though there were other ways, I guess, to get, I don't know what to conclude from that rather minor drop since the legalization has taken place. Third point, youth access. Like alcohol, they just get it from somebody else to purchase it. So keep that in mind, if you would, on deliberating the impact or non-impact on youth and access to this product. Fourth point, staff did point out with maps, I was there, why the 200 meter was chosen over the 300 meter. Since the 300 meter would really exclude almost everywhere for places that were eligible. There would be none Lynn Valley Center. And my final point, it took really so many years of alcohol research to finally determine what I feel is the dark side of alcohol. A drink a day is no longer really healthy. The Canadian Centre of Substance Abuse made a very large publication, which is probably worth scanning at least for council, a report of January of this year that pointed out the hazards of alcohol consumption. So it may be that there will be a downturn in alcohol consumption as a consequence of this research. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Dr. Cost. I don't see any other first-time speakers, but don't worry, again, once we've done the council questions, first-time, second-time speakers will be able to speak at that point. What I'm recommending at this point is that we have a short leg stretch, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll come back and return with staff responses to the council questions. And I think I have seen, my count is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 questions, something like that. So we'll come back to that in just a minute. So we're just a 3-minute recess. Yes. Sitting is the new smoking, so you all have to get up and stretch. think I need one more for quorum. Councillors Back and Pope are out of the room, and Councillor Councillor Murray, can you put your camera back on, please? Thank you very much. Okay, we have a quorum back in the room. So at this point, I'm going to ask for staff to respond to the questions that they've received of a clarifying nature from council.
Your worship, thank you for your questions. So we received a total of 8 questions. 2 were directed towards staff and 6 were directed towards the applicant. So I'll start with the 2 staff questions, and then I'll read out all the questions that were submitted to the applicant as well. The first question for staff was, is the retail unit currently an emergency exit? Based on our review, this is a typical commercial retail unit. And the application has been reviewed by the district's building department, and there does not appear to be any indication that this unit is an emergency exit. There's also no signage inside the mall that would suggest that this is an emergency exit. The second question for staff was, how many parking stalls are on the east side, excluding staff parking spaces? And it appears that there are approximately 30 parking stalls, excluding staff parking. The 6 questions received for the applicant are, how will you regulate people who may use cannabis within the immediate vicinity? And please define the immediate vicinity. Question 2 is, you indicated that staff will be trained to prevent sale to minors. Please elaborate and discuss how training is to be conducted.
So I'm gonna let's, rather than hit them with 6 questions all in a row, maybe it's best if we have a representative, the applicant, come and we'll pose the questions to them directly one by one, just so we make sure they're cleared.
Thank you.
I believe the first question to the applicant, and I may have a comment on this as well, is how will you regulate people who may use cannabis within the immediate vicinity? And please define immediate vicinity. And I guess we need to be clear about what a legal responsibility would be versus, what programs you may do over and above.
For sure. So as far as cannabis regulations go, consumption, even opening the product, is not allowed within the store at all, right? Excise taxes, similar to what you see on tobacco products, seal the product. If we are to even open up product, we have to do it under camera, make a record of it. So that's first and foremost, so even edible products. As far as it goes, the immediate facility, immediate vicinity, what we're thinking is this nook of the parking is kind of hidden from the rest of the mall. It's not as high traffic of an area. So I hear the community members who are talking about they're seeing people vape here. It makes sense. It's because there's not much activity happening there. So we will be installing exterior cameras because we're required to. But what we do above and beyond this is what we've noticed is putting the displays for the cameras that we have somewhere where our staff that's working can see. And so they can monitor the exterior, largely because cannabis, for better or for worse, they've limited the regulations that the windows, seeing inside and out. So for our staff, actually, it's kind of dangerous. They don't see what's going on outside. And that's been a huge concern in the industry and in very populous areas. It's dangerous. Lynn Valley, we're not too concerned about that, but still, I think having a camera outside serves as a few things. So watching out for that, making sure people are not vaping and or smoking cannabis. As well as just going outside the store. Like I've spent time at our stores. You don't always have customers. You don't always have to stay in. Go outside, get some fresh air. Watching how customers go and move after they leave. It's totally just about situational awareness. Was there a second part to that question, or was that?
I think the question, beyond your store, the responsibility would be up to BOZA and BOZA's policies as the property manager to decide whether smoking is permitted in their parking lot or not. And it would probably be up to BOZA to use their private property ownership regulations to kick someone off the property if they're doing something that isn't acceptable to BOZA's policies. And then beyond the property, it would go to District of North Vancouver bylaws and regulations for managing consumption.
For sure. And just to be clear, we've seen no issues either for us to monitor or for different landlords and property managers. Most cannabis consumers just come in and buy a product and they leave. It's not really about consuming it on site.
There were further applicant questions. I'll go back to you, to staff.
So the second question for the applicant was, you indicated that staff will be trained to prevent sale to minors. Please elaborate and discuss how training is to be conducted.
Thank you. So just the clear part of that is no minors are allowed in the store. ID checks, I think we've established that. But in addition to that, it becomes a human thing, right? Human error. How do we manage for that? And so it's trusting the staff and training them to, one, know the different ID types, to know what to look out for fake IDs. Our POS system has a prompt before you're able to input a sale. They actually have to confirm, did you check this person's ID if they look under the certain age? And so our managers are also trained to look out for staff that will be lax, right? It's human nature. So, and two, get ahead of that and address that way. As well as, I think, divergence I would talk about is, I heard about, liquor stores, kids hanging around, loitering outside of liquor stores. We all grew up and we know that happens, and asking for people to get them a boot or a run. And for the cannabis industry, we haven't seen it happen like liquor, because, the cannabis consumer, I think some of them are mindful of it, that we just got legalization and they're careful. But that goes back to the camera outside and watching out to see who's coming in, who's hanging out there. If you see a couple kids talking to every customer, maybe you got to watch out, right? And that's really, it's as simple as that. As well as the cannabis is very consultative sale. So every product is actually locked. Customers cannot self-serve like you do in a liquor store. So you talk to a customer, right? And it's a very unique product. I don't think it's something that's an easy thing where you kind of get an idea if it's fishy, what they're trying to buy, and you can address it that way as well. So there's a few of these like qualitative, nuanced ways that you can train your staff in human behavior, and things to just watch out for that are red flags.
Thank you very much. Another question?
Thank you. The third question is, please describe the profile of typical clients you have served in your 2 other locations.
For sure. Since cannabis legalization, one thing that the industry has been tackling a lot is the struggle between the unlicensed and the licensed market. By and large, heavy cannabis consumers still purchase some portion of their cannabis from unlicensed sources because it's not very clear sometimes to them even. It's online, it's accessible. And if we're talking about youth access, that's the concern. On their phone, they could just get it delivered right to their house. So our cannabis consumers, a lot of them do tend to be an older demographic. So we're seeing a lot of people that are CBD will come in once every 2-3 weeks. We know they're consuming it every day, probably. About 40 to 50% is the flower consumer who is smoking pre-rolls and joints. That's and rolling joints. That is the BC consumer that is well versed in cannabis. And we're seeing a bit more in edibles as well, people coming in and buying edibles of all sizes recreationally and drinks. So it ranges. I would say it tends to be an older demographic, really 25 and plus, more so than younger people coming in. And the older demographic is the one that surprised me the most. And they come in with a lot of questions. They've heard about CBD. They want to know what dosage to take, how much to take, what's dangerous, what's psychoactive, what is not. And that's what our staff is trained to do.
Thank you very much.
The next question is, did Nimbus connect with the Lynn Valley Community Association? And just before we pass it to the applicant, I did want to clarify that staff did notify the Lynn Valley Community Association, both on the non-statutory as well as the statutory notice.
Okay, thank you.
No, I did not consult. Apologies. While cannabis does get a lot of attention, we are a small business. I'm literally one person running this. And while I did not know about the Lynn Valley Community Association, I would be happy to reach out and have a discussion with them.
The fifth question is, can you confirm that it is the mall owner who is not supportive of having the inside entrance?
The mall owner is open to whatever that the district and the community would allow for. I've spoken to them recently.
But it was to comply with district guidelines and recommendations.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the sixth and final question is, how long does a typical customer spend in your current store?
It varies. You know, you have regular customers who come in and they have that one product they're buying once a week. They come, they grab it, they go. But there are some customers that come and they spend 10, 15 minutes in there. Like I said, it's consultative sale. We talked about the different cannabis products, the industry. You have to talk to basically every single customer that comes in there. They can't just self-serve. So it does happen probably longer than other retail stores.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to return to the public speaking list at this point. I do have a first-time speaker joining us virtually, so if we can move Massa over to the panel. Okay, Massa, can you
Hello?
hear me?
Yeah,
Hi,
hi.
welcome.
Thank you.
You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone for taking the time. I had a couple notes as I listened on and heard some of the concerns. And in fact, the applicant kind of went over some of these concerns already, but I am in full support of this application and it being specifically with Nimbus and Nimbus products because I'm a young adult. I'm in my now reproductive years as a woman, so I really sympathize with a lot of the adults, a lot of the parents, specifically the gentleman with the 13-year-old daughter. I think that rung really true to home. I remember how my parents felt when I was in high school, and there's nothing I think more horrifying than, you know, the things we all know, like the applicant said, we know that, you know, kids may loiter outside liquor stores and these things. We all know what that's like, and I completely sympathize. So I do think it's important that we have these discussions so that these parents and residents of Lynn Valley and our communities are heard, and that they can at least find some peace knowing that this is a legal product, of course, and we're not here really to discuss the medicinal or the legality of this product. Frankly, it's a legal product, just like alcohol and, as they mentioned, other adult products. And honestly, the easier it is to obtain legally, like the less profitable it is for black market dealers, and the closer we get to, I think, making it less of such a street thing and something that will end up in, you know, a child or a young teen's hands regardless. You know, I think the question of it being proximity to schools, I mean, the reality is these people that are, you know, like the woman who said, you know, she has to still face some sort of stigma admitting that she uses this legal product and that she would like it to be closer to her residential neighborhood. I mean, the reason we're, you know, discussing the application of such a store and such a commodity and things like that in such proximity to a school is because it's near a residential neighborhood where there are many legal adult users. And so frankly, I think it's a tough conversation to have, and it might be scary to confront for those residents who do have children. And even for myself, I completely understand the concern there. But ultimately, this is, you know, we've got an applicant who's very, very well versed in this industry. I think there's a very clear and definitive commitment here to surveillance and respecting the community's needs and safety and education. And I think with a legal product, that's the best we can hope for, right? Because ultimately, whether it's close to a school or not, I'm sorry to say it, but it's going to make its way there to those students or to those young people. I mean, young people are impressionable, and it's not to the fault of a parent or the fault of a child. This is the life we live, and there's lessons to be learned. And I think ultimately, the more education, the more conversation there is about these legal products, the more it can be controlled. And of course, with that control, there's benefits, the conversation of it being taxable, it providing another business, the entrepreneurship, all these things we've discussed this evening, I think are all very relevant to the conversation. And I think it's arguably more relevant to discuss how beneficial the education could be if it was to continue and prosper. And if we continue to have these conversations versus, allowing it to not be surveyed, near the schools in our neighborhoods and, have it be something that people are promoting as more of a street drug, right? So I personally truly think that the more we can support applicants like this who have a commitment to surveillance and making sure that this is an educational process through and through. I think that's a step in the right direction because we're already in a place where it's legal. And long before it was legal, when I was in high school, this was, already, made its way to every school in the North Shore. So I think that we need to keep educating and support applicants like this. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I'm going to open up the floor to first or second time speakers, and both virtual attendees and in person. Would anybody like to address the hearing for a first or second time? Yes, welcome, Mr. Hunter. Come on back up. Again, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Okay, I just have two quick points. Dave Hunter. I live 3 blocks from Lynn Valley Center. And my first point is if we want to make Lynn Valley a walkable community, we need to provide services that people can walk to. Most seniors I know in my social network take CBD for a variety of different pains and aches. We don't talk. I smiled when I heard older people over
25.
I thought, oh, okay. I think it's maybe the unseen generation, my generation, that take CBD that nobody hears much about, but a lot of us rely and use it for our aches and pains rather than drugs, the medicinal kind. So again, if we want a walkable community, we need to provide services that many people, including seniors, can walk to. And we all need to jump in our car now and drive down to the city to get our weekly or biweekly CBD. So it's normal now for seniors now to use CBD. It's no big deal. My second point is I was thinking if this application today were to put a liquor store into Lynn Valley Center, I expect we'd be hearing the same arguments. It's too close to schools. It's bad for your health. How do you prevent people from drinking liquor just outside the store? Will it attract youth hanging around outside the liquor store? So I think I just think we'd hear the same arguments if it was about a liquor store. And here we have a huge liquor store, Lynn Valley Center, with no issues. I see teens from high school walking by it every day on my way to the library, and there's no issue, no big deal. So I think I just think it's a bit hypocritical to be using some of these arguments against when liquor is known to be much worse for your health than things like CBD. As we now know, it's 2 drinks a month, I think is the new guideline or something. So I just think it's hypocritical to be using these arguments when we've already got a liquor store where many of the same issues would apply, but people aren't concerned about it anymore. So please let us seniors have a walkable service at Lynn Valley Center. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, anybody wishing to address the hearing for a first or second time? And as it's a bit of a quasi-judicial setting, I have to exhaust the speakers list in a little bit of a different way, if you'll just bear with me. Oh, I see a virtual hand. Dr. Cost, we can move Dr. Cost over as a panelist. Corey Cost, can you hear me?
Yes, Your Worship, I can, and I hope you can see and hear me.
Yes, I can. Welcome. 5 more minutes.
to put a pun on what I'm about to suggest, sometimes you miss the obvious. Again, why is there not, for staff security, the ability to look outside but not inside? In other words, one-way mirrors. They're easy to purchase and they work quite effectively. So this way staff can look what's going on outside for their own security, but nobody can actually look in. Why not make it a simple requirement if and when such a license should be okayed or endorsed by the District of North Vancouver? Just a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to say, would anybody else, so for a first time, would anybody else like to address the hearing? For a second time, would anybody else like to address the hearing? You're the applicant, so are we letting the applicant come back and respond at this point? Okay, so I'm going to have this gentleman first, and then I'll have the applicant. You're welcome to come back up. And I didn't catch your name last time.
Oh, it's Larry.
Thank you.
Clerk.
Thank you, Larry.
I'll just make it short and sweet, really. I think it's important for council to listen to the majority of the residents that live in Lynn Valley, family-oriented neighborhood. And if, I don't know about this number 54 against and 10 for, but I just think it's important that you respect and listen to what the community wants. And I think it's great that there's a store down in Park in Tilford. I don't think this, there's arguments about if the marijuana is good or bad. I don't think that's really the issue. I think the issue is what the residents of Lynn Valley want. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome back down, the applicant.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak once more. I'll keep it pretty brief. I think just one main comment I wanted to address. I think there was a confusion about the products that we offer and another Nimbus. I believe that what the speaker was referring to is Nimbus, a US company that has the same name as us. We do not carry their product. All cannabis retail stores in British Columbia have access to the exact same product, and it's all government regulated. We do not white label or develop our own product. We only sell what federally licensed producers allow and carry a wide variety as long as it's licensed. In addition to community feedback, I just wanted to say we did post on the North Vancouver Reddit page our petition. A lot of good discussions there. I think a lot of people just didn't think that they had to really reach out and support because it's legal. That's kind of the feedback we got in the petition. And there's 207 people for and 7 against. I really think everyone should go check out that Reddit thread and just see the kind of the conversation the community's having around there. I thank you again for your time, and thank you for the community for the feedback. There's a lot of good ideas that we got about how we can be better members of the community, and really, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Just confirming, I haven't seen any further questions come into staff. Have you seen any additional questions? Okay, so I'm going to start this again here. So for first time, is anybody else wanting to address the hearing? A second time, would anybody else like to address the hearing? A third and final time, would anybody else like to address the hearing? Okay, hearing none at this point, Mr. Clerk, I believe we've exhausted the speakers list. Okay, Councillor Murray, you have a motion?
I move that we close this public hearing and return this bylaw to council.
I second that.
Seconded by Councillor Hanson. Thank you very much. I'm going to call the question on that motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. I'm just going to check in with the clerk at this point. So the matter is now closed, and that means that council cannot hear any new additional information on the matter. And then what will happen is it will come back to a public meeting for second or third reading, checking in with the clerk. We don't have a fixed date for that yet, but we're hoping to add it to the 27th of February meeting. Is that correct? Okay, so we're hoping to have it on the February 27th meeting. That's the first opportunity for council to really comment on what they've heard at the public hearing and what their decision is going to be at that point. But that does what you have to do in that week in case that meeting happens to get overloaded and it gets bumped a week is you have to watch the agenda in that week just to verify that it's going to be on the February 27th meeting. We'll do our best to do that or to advertise another date if it's going to be on a different night. So at this point, I'm going to thank everybody for their participation in the hearing. Thank you to staff for your reports and your answers to the questions. We do appreciate that. I wish everybody a fantastic week. Have a great night.